Thank you for joining us tonight as we're getting ready for the high school football playoffs that get underway this weekend. I've got two guys that know a lot about high school football with me here tonight, and they'll join in a second. But right now, I want to tell you about our sponsors. Thank you to Hammond Lumber, Rouse Garage, Heron Brothers, Governor's Restaurant, Anglers, Gordon Contracting, Sluggers Training Facility, Black Bear Crane, Ideal Energy Solutions, Millside Fitness, Jamie Gilbert, Associate Broker, Next Home Experience, Pine State Nutrition, and Rowdy's Paving. Thank you to them. And we got a lot of stuff coming up this week. We got soccer playoffs tomorrow, Tuesday. We have I'll be covering Dexter PCHS girls soccer quarterfinal game. And then Wednesday, some field hockey in Dexter, field hockey in Dover Foxcroft, and soccer in Guilford. So really busy couple of days coming up. And then this weekend, we'll have a live coverage of York and Foxcroft on Friday night, 6:45 pregame. Charles Beal and Logan Martin will be giving you the broadcast for that one, and that's Friday night, and that should be fun. That was a close game the first time they played, so we'll see what happens. And then we'll probably have some semifinal field hockey on Saturday as well. But now we're going to get to why we're here tonight, and that is to talk about high school football and preview the playoffs coming up. Again, I got two special guests with me tonight. You saw them on the preview show in late August, early September. First, I'll bring in Bob Beatham. Bob, thank you for joining tonight.
Thanks for having me. Season's really flown by. It just seems like it was yesterday that we were on talking about the upcoming season. Now the regular season's over, getting ready for the playoffs.
Yes, and here we go again. Again, that all gets underway this weekend, Friday night, and also joining us is Andrew Hart. You know him from Maine high school football, and all over the place, the whole football season, and a great site that will get you all the football information. Thank you for joining us, Andrew.
Oh, pleasure to be on it always. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's get right into it, and let's start with Class B, and as I said, jump right in. Coney has dominated all season long. Um, Andrew, is there any surprises? I mean, I know we'll go over our picks later, what we had for the, before the season. I think Bob was the only one that had Coney, but they have a dynamic quarterback. As good of a quarterback as you're going to find in any class, don't they?
I definitely think Parker Morin is going to get all sorts of positive awards, for how well he's been, and no kid, as I'd probably say, it's a safe thing to say, as much of a command of the offense as we've seen out of Parker. Calm, cool, collected. From everything I've seen, he's been unflappable. You haven't really seen a whole lot that's kind of made him nervous, kind of, the confidence factor is sky high. And he has that in part because of the mastery of the offense that they've got. With what BL Leopard has been able to cultivate with Coney is just phenomenal. You don't really see a pass happy offense in the high school level. And Coney has been the complete, prototype for any coach out there that, one, wants to know how to have an aerial attack, and then two, be able to know how to have a pipeline established so you can bring one kid up and then prepare the next one and then prepare the next one to handle that sort of an offensive load. And I'd be remiss if I also didn't say, they not only do they have the smart, the intelligence, the football IQ at the quarterback position, they bring in receivers that know their routes, they know where to go. They're not afraid to kind of, go into the tough areas and make the tough catches. Been some phenomenal receptions from some of the highlights over the weeks. I'm floored. Well, I shouldn't be floored by it, but every time you just see it, your jaw drops and goes, you get the oohs and the ahs when you see what's going on.
Yeah, and their offense has been the highlight, but they've always scored opponents 401 to 83 this year. So defensively, they've done the job too. Bob, really, maybe the last player we've seen like him was also a Coney player, also Ben Lucas, huh?
Yeah, and they also won a state championship that year. His senior year beat Kennebunk in the state final up to Maine in 2013. So they certainly have a great opportunity to do that this year. As we alluded to too, I mean, their defense has been outstanding as well. I think the difference maybe between this Coney team and maybe past Coney teams is their physicality, from what I understand. I haven't had a chance to see them this year, year, but from what I understand, they're a very physical football team and really dominated their opposition this year.
Well, next we'll go on to the South and a team that both I believe both of you have got to see. Bob, you saw Westbrook play, right?
I did see Westbrook play. They're very physical on the line of scrimmage, and they've got athletic physicality as well. I had the chance to see them play Kennebunk, and really they shut Kennebunk out, dominated the football game. Finals 20-0, but could have been even more than that. Their defensive end really impressed me. Can't think of his first name, but Jones for Westbrook. But they're very, very good along the line of scrimmage. Solid quarterback play and they're just and Westbrook's having one of their best seasons. So certainly, I think one of the takeaways from the regular season is the performance of Westbrook, and out of probably five teams down there that week in and week out can all kind of beat each other up there down there.
Yeah, Andrew, you got a chance to see Westbrook, right? You did a game with Ethan. Didn't they play Chevrolet?
They did Saturday afternoon game, and not just the defense, but I'm gonna focus on their quarterback position because Giovanni Staples, once again, he did good last year. He was able to, he had some of the pieces that were missing. I think there was still kind of a learning curve going on with Sam Johnson's offense there at Westbrook. But one of the things that I just was kind of in awe about was not only could Giovanni get a tight spiral into places that most kids his age at this level can't, he could do so on the run. His ability to bootleg both on his his front side and his back side was unreal. More than once I saw him just kind of escape out of the pocket, and normally when you do that, you kind of get that, here comes the problems, but he handled it flawlessly. And that was one of the best weapons that I thought he had going for him in that first half for Chevrolet, was being able to make some magic happen as he was able to scramble around and give his receivers time, find those open spaces.
And kind of mentioned it, but the Class B South is kind of loaded. Got a lot of balance there, huh? Westbrook's gonna have to play the winner of Marshwood and Chevrolet. That's not going to be a gimme in the semifinals, is it?
No, I don't think there's going to be any gimmies. And it was kind of a worry looking early on because, Westbrook was a bit of an unknown quantity. They did well last year, yes, but didn't really know what to expect. Falmouth, it's a heck of it's a lot to put on a team to expect them to have the same run of dominance that they did last year when they won the Class B state championship. Kennebunk looks strong. They've looked strong all season. Marshwood, a bit of an unknown. Chevrolet, you had to think was going to rebound. Gorham Biddeford was going to be fighting, for the fifth, sixth spot, you figured. So didn't really know, until this point. It was like, wow, it really was a loaded effort. Marshwood with a small roster has been phenomenal. Chevrolet with Skip Capone getting that, that handle on the backfield and knowing how to best employ his, players, not just to be a tough running team, but also to be able to get that ball out of the backfield and some of their trick screen passes. Falmouth is finally healthy. We saw what they could finally do in their game last week. Kennebunk, Austin West, toughest running back, reminds me a bit of Larry Zonka when you see him running north-south and just mowing kids down. And then, Westbrook with a little bit of everything. So I'm loving the competition. I think that the quarterfinals coming out there is just going to be great entertainment.
And Bob, in the North, obviously Coney's a clear favorite right now, but how do you kind of see the rest of that region? Freiburg's 2, Lars 3, Messalonsky and Skowhegan will play a quarterfinal game this week. How do you see the rest of the class after Coney?
Yeah, obviously Coney's the favorite too, and I think the one thing that would concern me about Coney a little bit, I think Coney's going to come out of the North, but sometimes teams that have been more battle tested in the state championship game, I hate to say it, but the North's probably has been down this year compared to what they, certainly Lawrence is young this year, although they've come on at the end of the year and played a lot better. But typically, and you've got a lot of really proud football communities there. But I would say definitely a down year in the Pine Tree Conference B, when you compare that to the Southern Maine teams. I think Coney comes out of there. I did pick Falmouth preseason to win the whole thing, but I would probably pick Coney over Falmouth right now. But again, state championship game, I think could go either way.
Yeah, so you see with Falmouth kind of getting some injured players back, maybe kind of going on a roll here.
Yeah, I'm still going with Falmouth to come out of there. Orton in the south and Coney coming out of the north.
And Andrew, you kind of how do you see it?
When I look at the North again, I picked, I think if I remember right, I picked Lawrence early on because that is the sort of team what John Hurston is always able to do come the winter, come the colder months is he's able to get that mentality to just kind of knock kids around and force teams to be tough on the line. And as Bob alluded to, yeah, they're an incredibly young team. However, for them to pull off their win last week over Messalonski, push themselves into third place, I think they're starting to peak at the right time. Freiburg Academy has had more good than bad. Ty Boone is going to be in that sort of, I'd like to see him in the Fitzpatrick semifinalist list. He doesn't get a lot of coverage, kind of being out there in Freiburg Academy in the Freiburg region, but he's got some amazing upside potential from what I've seen on his videos. He's lightning quick. Ultimately, though, they're going to have to be able to catch Coney on what I feel is going to be a bad day for them. And unlike years in the past where they've kind of tripped over themselves, I don't really think Tony's going to have that problem this year.
Yeah, and in the South, you kind of see that as obviously Kenny, Westbrook, Kennebunk, Falmouth's up there. You kind of see that. How you see that going?
I don't want to take anything away from Falmouth, especially getting healthy. Marshwood, the tough thing about going with them is their small roster. If some of the articles was saying they're only down to like at some games they played in the high 20s, which maybe in other classes that's not a big problem, but in Class B, where you've got to be able to have your well-rested upperclassmen available at a moment's notice, that could be to their detriment, especially where they've got Marshwood right off the bat. Kennebunk, another one of those teams that just, they're hard nosed, they're hard pressed, and it's a bit tough to call. I think I went with Kennebunk. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. Did I go with Kennebunk early on?
I can tell you in just a second. In Class B, Andrew, you went with Falmouth.
Falmouth, okay.
You went with Falmouth. Bob, we all went with Falmouth winning it.
All right. I feel like I want to reverse things just a little bit. I keep going back and forth between Westbrook and Kennebunk. Westbrook I like because of their defense. Kennebunk because they know how to grind out the game and control the offense, and that is so important in your mid-November games. I'm gonna change mine. I think I'm gonna go with Kennebunk. Folks in Westbrook may not like that call, but I gotta be honest. I gotta look at what the cold weather always brings, and I think it favors the Rams more than anything.
It's all right. They got something they can put on the bulletin board tomorrow.
And it'd be the first time my comments led to something like that.
Yeah. Let's go on to Class C, and this has been, in my opinion, the fun. A lot of fun. This class up and down, and I don't think the playoffs can be any different. You can kind of look at the lower teams there. Wouldn't shock anybody if Nokomis went somewhere and upset somebody, and they're a 6 seed. Wouldn't surprise anybody. Foxcroft has to get by York first, but it, wouldn't surprise anybody if they put up a good effort and upset somebody. That I think just from top to bottom, that class is just loaded. Bob, that the Levitt Herman game kind of shows what that class has been all season long, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Again, just a great football game, and tough break at the end for Herman, but obviously all those two teams are going to be right at it. And if they are fortunate to get by the quarterfinal games, they'll have an opportunity to face each other again down in Turner. But again, they'll both have tall tasks too. Levitt potentially against Foxcroft Academy, and then that Herman Nokomis game. it should be another great game. They had a great game a couple weeks ago in Herman. Both physical football teams. Seth Bowden for Nokomis certainly a handful, and um, they handled easily a Madomic Valley team that was really coming on late and starting to get healthy as well, and really had no trouble with Madomic Valley, which game that certainly surprised me on Saturday. Not so much that Nokomis won, but margin of victory was certainly a surprise there for Nokomis.
Yeah, when I saw Nokomis a few weeks back, and they impressed me on both sides of the ball, and their running game, their line sets everything up for them. So they're dangerous, but they're a 6 seed. You got let's talk about Greeley, Andrew. We kind of talked about all the other teams before we talked about the top ranked Greeley team. 8-0 coming from 8-man. Kind of shows if you have the talent, you can kind of play at any level, doesn't it?
It does. And I one of my articles earlier this season, I talked about what I call dogged determination. Greeley has shown a grit that I have not seen out of teams in a long time. Usually your team at the top just flat out controls everything. I think back to those years where you had a Lawrence that went unbeaten in the North, or Winslow, or Foxcroft Academy. I think of those times where Wells ran the table down in the South. I think of the Marshwood years where they went to back to back to back to back back to back to back to back titles. I think of all those, but then I look at Greeley. They have found a different way to win each and every time. I'm going to pull up their schedule because there's a few games that especially stood out to me. I remember that close fought battle that they had, Levitt.
With the Nokomis too. Yeah.
And I think that was the 2-point tackle at the end. If I remember right, it was a tackle on a 2-point play that dragged the lineman down. Then the next week, they take a lead against Levitt or Falmouth. Falmouth comes back. They go into overtime. Greeley scores first, gets ahead. And then there's that rather unfortunate kind of bootleg pass. They try to get a quarterback all alone. He slips and falls in the artificial turf at Greeley. They lose in a heartbreaker. Then Greeley comes back, a close-fought game against Nokomis. Then they're all over Foxcroft. Then they show up against Wells, and the Warriors had no answers for him. And then I look against Oceanside, and it was a lot closer game than what I've had. But each and every time, they find new ways to win. And I had a coach who said, he felt like Greeley could be beaten. And I said, you're right. But nobody's found a way to do it because Greeley just finds new ways to win every time. And I think that's going to be one of their sticking points. One of the things I'm going to remember about them is just the crazy ways they keep finding ways to get that W.
Yeah, and they if they get by the quarterfinal round, they will play the winner of Gardner and Wells. And what a quarterfinal matchup that will be, huh? Gardner and Wells. 4-5, Gardner will have the home team, but Wells is a team that you and I, Andrew, both picked in the preseason. They come in as a 5 seed. So, but again, there's another team where this time of year, would it surprise you if they did go on a run?
It wouldn't shock me. And Wells, kind of like Levitt, has been a team that started off a bit slow. They kind of bounced around a little bit, and it went to show just how much movement a team could expect to have. There was no sacred spot within C, and there's no easy. You couldn't take a game off. You couldn't lose and suddenly expect to hold your same position. Wells up and down, back and forth. Even with the loss, they dropped back, and you saw how close it got to be at the end. There was, the Crabtree points really forced them to have to understand, look, you drop more than a game here or game there, and suddenly you're staring at a longer road, a playoff road. And this time of year, you want to have that home field advantage. You want to have that bit of familiarity, especially, looking when you start forecasting out and being a statewide class, you don't have that regional thing. You could be playing, case in point, Wells playing down in going to Gardner. And then the next week, if they can win that, they're going to be going to Greeley. And then who knows where they go from there. Foxcroft Academy is, if you're York, you're going to Foxcroft Academy to play. Should you happen to win that game, your next spot is going to be going to Turner, going to Levitt. So there is going to be crazy road travel that you're going to have to literally hold to the adage. Don't think ahead of don't think ahead in tournament play until you've gone past that first step.
Yeah. And want to say kudos to you, Andrew, because you picked Greeley as one of the final two teams in that class. Not saying they're going to be, but they finished top in the regular season, and so they've got a good shot to to make a run.
I'm going to pat myself on the back, but only because after seeing what they were able to do in their run last year and how much they returned back for not just talent but athletes. That was the most important thing. They brought back a lot of gifted athletes that have that sort of Cumberland mentality that we don't have to be stars, but we all have to pull in the same direction. We're going to be really good all together rather than just worry about a few of us being great. And that goes back even to when, before they had to kind of disband due to numbers, that was the way they were before. They were tough, gritty, dogged. It's good to see that some things don't change over the years, and that's to the Rangers' credit. They still have that. I know they like to say Rangers lead the way. Here's their chance to do just that at the Class C level.
So you got to change your picks a little bit because you picked Wells and Greeley, so they could meet in the semifinals. But who's your pick to make the final two there?
Oh, I want to go with Levitt, but the tough thing that everybody was talking in that Levitt-Herman game about the touchdown that wasn't, and as much as one play can kind of change things, maybe we should also look at, and Kyle Gallant brought this up in his post-game interview, they got 3 possessions after that point. Each possession ended on an interception. Imagine how much more different that game it turns out if the Hawks don't have those picks. If they can convert at least a touchdown, maybe 2 touchdowns. Is Levitt able to get another touchdown on the board? Can they find a way to get something further into the end zone than just 12 points? I don't know. It's the nice thing is that, one game gives you a lot to think about if you get a second crack at each other. So it is so tough, but it's tough to pick against Herman because of how well they've done. But at the same time, Levitt's peaking at the best of times. So I've got to go with the old reliable Hornets and Greeley.
There you go.
That's what I've got to go with at this point in time.
Going chalk there, 1-2. Bob, you picked Levitt and Herman. Obviously, that can't happen. That could be a semifinal matchup and would be outstanding if it is. But kind of what would you say now going into the playoffs?
Right now, again, I echo what Andrew said. I really like Levitt too. I just think again they're peaking at the right time. Defensively, they really come on the end of the year. I'm going to go with Levitt to over Greeley in the state final.
Okay. And I'm going to just leave it just because I can, because I picked Wells and Herman, and that is a possibility. But there's a lot of things that could happen in that class that I don't think would surprise any of us. It wouldn't be that surprising. But let's go on to Class D now, where it's kind of been in the north anyway. It's been John Babs and Winslow at the top. But Bob, let's talk about John Babs though. They've got some injuries, don't they? That they kind of been feeling here the last few weeks.
Yeah, and they've got one key injury to real good running back, defensive back too, in Zach Babcock out for the year with a knee injury. Going to miss the entire basketball season too, unfortunately. But certainly a tough break for John Babs. I think hurts them more defensively in the secondary than it does hurting them offensively, and he was certainly a big part of their option attack as well. So. That's certainly a key thing. And again, Winslow's going to be Winslow. I mean, Winslow, again, it would be a significant upset if one of those two don't get to the Northern Maine final, John Babston Winslow. And, Winslow's going to do what Winslow's going to do. They're going to, I'm sure, make a few adjustments from the regular season game. But again, they're going to line up double wing, play smash mouth football. You might see them run the Bimson kid a little bit more at fullback than the first meeting. Other thing you might see a little bit more from them is running the quarterback, Liam Fortin as well. But I mean, they're not going to sling the ball all over the place. They're gonna do what they do, and I'm sure they'll be ready for the rematch and should be an outstanding football game.
Yeah, I saw Winslow a few weeks ago, and they really impressed me. They run that freshman is as good as any freshman I think we've seen here in a long time. Very impressive. I think
Yeah,
we
great
kind of got
interview with
the
him too.
what's that?
That was a great interview with him too. He just seems like a real grounded, humble kid too. So
Yeah, and I think I posted
Lubian,
this that interview. Like, you don't see professional athletes give the kind of answers that kid did, and
yeah, he
whatever he
was
is,
outstanding.
14 years old. Yeah, you can just definitely check that out. That's on our pages. But very, very humble. Very humble. I mean, he credits all his teammates and his coaches, and if, I think any student athlete in the state, no matter what class they're in, can follow his lead for sure. Very
Christian.
impressed. In the South, we all did pretty well. We all picked Winthrop, and they're at the top of the class there, and have looked good. Andrew, kind of, what do you see in the South? Dare goes two. Winthrop, Monmouth one, Poland three, Oak Hill four, Freeport and Morse round out the top six. How do you see the South?
South, the parity from at this point two to five is very good. I wouldn't have thought of that early on. I mean, I immediately pegged Winthrop, Monmouth, Halldale just because it seemed like they were bringing back quite a bit, and the consistency was there. Joel Stoughton still there, still has that same sort of system in play. Dirigo could have been a threat. The hardest thing for them, though, was when they lost Hudson Lufkin. 2 games in, he was just putting up crazy, ridiculous numbers. Tecmo Bowl numbers. Madden on easy mode against your 4-year-old nephew who's just learning to hold a controller and is more intent on having food out of the snack bowl than playing a game. I mean, the numbers were just that amazing. And then unfortunately he suffers a horrible injury that ends up not only taking him out for the winter season because he's a wrestler, if I remember right, it's going to put him with a delayed recovery going back into the spring session. And it's heartbreaking because he looked like he had this amazing all over the field potential that might have made Dirigo a possible threat towards Winthrop Monmouth Halldale, potentially. Um, and, however, they've still been consistent. Hats off to them. They didn't let one player define them, which at Class D can kind of be. The really good teams can have a couple players in depth, whereas the ones that are usually middle of the pack tend to just have one lead guy that carries them until he's no longer there to carry them. As for the rest, the one that's kind of I've been happy to see holding the way they have has been Oak Hill. They seem to be a very young team, maybe a very small numbers team, but here they are. They were able to keep themselves at 5-3 like the rest of them, when I would have thought maybe they might have fell back just a little bit more. I think the regional quarterfinal rounds is going to be an interesting one between, you'll have Poland and Morse, but more importantly, Oak Hill and Freeport might be an exciting one. Especially, Freeport can kind of be hit or miss, but I think they're one of those peaking at the right time sort of teams.
Picks wise, I'm in Class D. We all had Winthrop winning it, win the state. So I guess I'll stick with that. But I had Matt Narcook as their opponent. I'm gonna switch that to Winslow, even though Matt Narcook is still in it. So you never know. Stranger things have happened. But I will go with Winslow against Winthrop, and I'll stay with Winthrop. Bob, do you want to change anything? You had John Babs and Winthrop.
I'm going to pick John Babs to win the gold ball.
Okay, so you
I
do
think
switch.
that I think well, number one, they've got a 4-year starter at quarterback that really knows how to run that triple option. They get Winslow again, it might come down to a key play. They don't throw the ball a lot, but when they do, they're pretty effective with that. I don't know. I just think Baps makes enough plays to get by Winslow again, and then um, they have not played as well at the end of the year as they probably did early. But I think the bye week's going to help them. I think they'll be able to regroup a little bit, and I like Baps to come out of there.
And Andrew, you had Winslow and Winthrop with Winthrop winning it. You want to change anything there?
I still feel confident in Winslow. You get both them and John Babst. If I remember right, C and Class, actually, I don't know about what Class C will do, but I think Class D North will still be at Hampton Academy for their regional final. So it'll put
Cameron
them on.
Stadium in Bangor.
What's that?
That'll be at Cameron Stadium in Bangor.
Okay. So it'll be on artificial turf nonetheless. So
Yeah.
I still feel that, late in the season, you've got to have ball control. Ball control is going to be the key. So that's where I'm seeing Winslow having that advantage. Once they can get kind of all their four-headed attack on the ground going, I don't think there's going to be much that the Crusaders can do to stop them. And it'll just be, maybe it comes down to a play. Maybe it could be one of those possessions where you wonder if it would have went the other way. Maybe it might be something different, but I still feel confident in Winslow, just like I still feel really confident in Winthrop, Monmouth, Halldale coming out of the South.
Yep. So we'll stay there. So now
and then the first in the regular season matchup too, John Bapps. I wouldn't say they played a perfect game, but they played. I mean, they had a lot of things go their way. When they scored the kickoff, the touchdown to go up. When they scored the touchdown to go ahead, then they get recover the kickoff, and then score again, go up 2 scores. That was a huge play in that game. So they had a lot of big plays that a lot of things kind of went their way in that game too. So
the only thing though, Bob, is I look at their last 2 games. And, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but, they beat Oak Hill 29-28 2 weeks ago, or a week ago. And then this weekend, they only beat Hampton Academy, a winless Hampton Academy, I might add, and having to come from behind to do so, 20-13. Is that any reason to kind of have, pause for it?
Oh, I would totally agree with that. Again, we're going to kind of see what happens the next couple of weeks. I'm not, I could change my pick here in 2 weeks when they actually meet up and play. But we'll see what I think the bye week is certainly much needed for John Bapps too, just to kind of regroup, get their bearings back again, and get ready for postseason. But I think the first part of the season certainly showed what they're capable of, and they did beat Winslow by 2 scores the first time. So we'll see what happens the second time around.
Definitely should be interesting if those 2 teams meet up again, as is expected at this point. Let's go to 8-man lodge, where I'll start off with Spruce Mountain, and boy, they impressed me quite a bit this past Saturday. And I went to the last 2 Dexter games. They beat Holton 50-8, who's number 3 in the North, and they lost 58 to Spruce Mountain, who is the top seed in the South. But if they lost the game, they probably would have been second or third. So I think the difference in the South and North right now, balance wise, I guess that's my point. Is quite a difference in the teams, the teams in the playoffs in the South compared to the North. Don't you think, Andrew? There's a lot more there.
Yeah, it seems like those coming out of the South are much more battle tested. It's been the toughest from top to bottom. It's been the toughest region of all 4 8-man regions. There's just no way around it. And anytime you're playing in a region where you've got a 7-1 Mount Ararat, who has been, everybody looks to Old Orchard Beach as being the cream of the crop. You got to Mount Ararat's is a close, no, maybe not close, but they're definitely second place. What Frank True is able to do consistently out of there goes without saying. Then Yarmouth came out of nowhere. I did not expect Yarmouth to have the season that they did. 7-game winning streak. Ignatius McGrath has been probably the best quarterback, the best pure passing quarterback, I'll say, out of anybody in 8-man, and that includes Hollis Schwalm out of Camden Hills and West Gallant out of Old Orchard Beach. I don't think he's going to, I won't put him up in the Jack Brewer category, but he deserves a lot of mention. They're 250, 300 yards consistently with a couple touchdowns is not something easy to do at the 8-man level. So you got that. Lake Region has been, they look consistently tough. Yeah, they're only 4 wins, but I wouldn't take that away from them. Grey New Gloucester was a tough out. Cape Elizabeth, even in their first win, they still showed lots and lots of promise. So for Spruce Mountain to emerge on top like they did is just, it's a slugfest battle. And my Monday morning article, I did a piece on that of just how far it is that the Phoenix have come, going all the way back to that merger back in what was it, 2007 or whatever, early 2000s, between Livermore Falls and Jay. And finally, this is that season where they look like they could make it to the state championship after so many times that it's fallen short.
Yeah, they're a fun bunch too, fun team to watch. So Bob, you're the only one that really has to change your pick here, as in the this region, as you had, and we all had Camden Hills, so and they finished the top seed, so we all knew something there. But in the other region, Andrew and I both had Mount Airy. You had Cape, so who'd you like to change that to, Bob?
I think I would go Mount Ararat's certainly in the South. I went Cape. I wasn't quite sure what to expect from them, but I figured them coming from 11 man, a lot of teams coming from 11 man do pretty well in 8 man coming over. So,
Yeah.
but so I decided to go with Cape preseason, but I think we'll go Mount Ararat.
Yeah, and we can go on to the small region now. We can go do the North last because I think all of us agree that kind of the South, unless something really odd happens, it's kind of the old Orchard Beach Invitational, isn't it, Andrew?
The city of Old Orchard Beach is going to have to fall into the ocean with no rescue craft. Dean Plant is going to have to be abducted by space aliens, and most of the roster is going to have to join circuses across the world for them not to emerge out of the South. And don't let my joking kind of fool anybody. It's not to take anything away from Telstar and Shakopee Valley, but the gulf in talent, the coaching talent, the player talent is just so drastically, so drastic between everybody else and Old Orchard Beach, and nothing really changed. Nothing changed my mind there. I did like what I saw out of Telstar. They've had consistency for the first time, I think, overall since they went undefeated back in 2021. That was a tough year because as soon as they get the bye and then they lose in the semifinals. So I'd like to think, they handled Shakopee Valley pretty well, and Shakopee Valley's been another one of those teams on the grow. Maybe the Rebels can find something. Maybe Tim O'Connell in his last year, is it Tim? Yeah. Sorry. This is his last year coaching. I saw the article that said he'd be stepping down after being at the helm of Telstar. So Tim O'Connor, maybe he's learned something. You'd like to kind of see him go out on a high note. And wouldn't it be the craziest story ever if Telstar is able to go to their first unified state championship by beating Old Orchard Beach along the way? That would be it'd be the greatest upset, I think, in football history. Maine high school football history, if that could happen. But more realistically, I don't see a challenge coming up. I think, I don't see anybody within 45 points of Old Orchard Beach, to use the 6-man adage. Nobody's going to out-slaughter them.
Even in the North? Like, even whoever comes out of the North?
I like how competitive the North has been.
Top three, yeah.
I like, Orono, there's questions to be had about whether they could, where were they going to come in? And after starting off slow, and it's to be expected when you play Old Orchard Beach and Stearns, that is one heck of a juggernaut for anybody. Red Riots have won their last 6 games. They've come in from kind of that bottom spot, and they've risen all the way up to second, past Dexter, past Bucksport, close enough to Stearns. Does Bob Sinclair's boys did they learn their lessons early on that would make them a threat against Stearns? I don't know. Stearns just they've looked so impressive all year. They've had, believe it or not, they've allowed the fewest points in the 8-man small school class, and that's even less than Old Orchard Beach. Who would have guessed that?
Yeah, impressive. Definitely impressive. And I think the Orono Dexter semifinal game will be definitely a good game. It was good. It was a very good game when they played at Dexter mid-season. Kind of neither team could really stop the other, and it came down to a few big plays. And obviously both those coaching staffs have a lot of respect for each other, as you saw in my interview with Bob Sinclair, and Andrew Levinseller kind of joined us there. So definitely coaches that have a lot of respect for each other, and then programs do too. So that should be a good matchup Friday night at 6:00. I want to know, Bob, how do you kind of see the that region?
Certainly the North, obviously Stern's a heavy favorite there. And I think the Dexter-Orono game is going to be very interesting Friday night too. And another one of the highlights of the season too. And we talk about how much high school football brings communities together. I think the whole thing with the Dexter community this year and trying to win that money for their upgrades of the fields, I think was great and really brought that community together. I kind of like Dexter to get to the final, face Stearns. I know when they met in week 4, that was really Dexter's first real game of the season. They played Washington Academy, Valley, and Mountain View up until that point. So I think now that Dexter's been battle tested a little bit, I expect them to go to the Orono and win that game. On not to give away my picks this week, but I like Dexter to go win that game on Friday night at Orono, or whenever they're going to play that game. We're supposed to get monsoon Friday night, so
yeah, I heard it's
we
supposed
shall
to
see.
stop by the night. I heard it's supposed to be pretty bad during the day, but we'll see if some games get moved. Wonder about our game too at Foxcroft on Friday night, so we'll see. But do you, either one of you see whoever Stearns, Dexter, Orono giving Old Orchard a test? Bob, did you see anybody?
I think Stearns can certainly give them a test. I know they, played a tough game up in Millinocket early in the year. I would certainly favor Old Orchard Beach to win that, but it could certainly be a competitive game.
Yeah. Andrew, what do you think?
I look, Stern's schedule, they only lost to Old Orchard Beach by 2 touchdowns. And that really tough Spruce Mountain game, they only lost, it was a last minute play.
Yeah.
Last couple seconds play that won it for the Phoenix over the Minutemen. So they're a good team in their own right. And maybe, Cody Herring sits down and looks at how exactly is it that Lake Region put together the sort of game that they did. That contest was the most points anybody has scored against Old Orchard Beach, as long as they've been an 8-man, which is unreal to think about after, these years of dominance. But if there's one thing people know about football is you learn from your own failures and adapt from the successes of others. And maybe sits down and says, how is it that they could maybe not stop them offensively, but keep pace, or stop them defensively, but keep pace with them offensively. And nobody pictured what was it, 2 years ago when Orono pulled off that shocker at Bangor against Old Orchard Beach.
Yeah.
Sometimes these things happen, and maybe that's the sort of thing. But realistically, even though this is not the same sort of star-studded team that Old Orchard Beach had last year, they are still tough in their own right. West Gallant, in my opinion, is going to be maybe not a Fitzpatrick Fitzy finalist, but he should be there in the semifinalist, the pool there. And I don't think Stearns has the offense to be able to keep pace with them.
And that Lake Region Old Orchard game might have been the game of the year. That kind of shows how good, another sign of how good the large conference South is too. They're the number 4 team, and they're doing, putting up that kind of effort against Old Orchard. I just think that might be, again, Lake Region and Spruce Mountain in the semifinals. That could be a good game.
I asked Dean Plant, the head coach for Old Orchard Beach, what is it you're looking at in your schedule? And he said, I know that people look at us a certain way, but at the same time, I want my boys to be as ready for the playoffs as they can. And for him, playing tough opponents, punching well above his weight is no issue for him, because he feels that confident in his team, his coaches, his players, his community. Hats off to him. And I don't know what the plan would be going forward. He didn't want to move up. That was one of the things he was adamant about, not because for any other reason, but he has a vision for where he sees his school. and he has a vision for where he sees things are at, and he's not going to be he's not going to be pushed around from that. Short of there being a drastic change in 8-man football, he'll be where he's at, and to that extent, he wants tough schedules. He certainly got it this year, and his team handled it with flying colors.
So in 8-man small, you, Andrew and Bob both had Old Orchard Beach and Stearns, with Old Orchard Beach winning it. I had Old Orchard Beach and Dexter with Old Orchard winning it. I think we all can stand with our Old Orchard winning it, and I guess we can all stay with our picks for now, because I would say definitely Stearns is the favorite, but it really wouldn't be overly surprising if Orono or Dexter came out of that either. But Stearns has definitely shown, again, with those few that playing Old Orchard kind of competitive, and that Spruce Mountain game was a heck of a game, a heck of an end, and that's a very good Spruce Mountain team. So they're definitely the favorites, but Orono and Dexter both know them well too, so it wouldn't be that surprising. But that's all our No, that's not all our regions. There's one Class A that doesn't really start the playoffs until another week, but we can kind of go over that. We'll start with you, Bob. What are your thoughts there? Bangor's had a heck of a season, and what's your overall thoughts of Class A?
They did have a heck of a season. I would say, state championship, especially after what I saw Friday night over in Standish, goes to Thornton Academy. Thing with Thornton Academy is and it's a very different Thornton Academy team from what they've had years past. A lot of times they'll spread it around a lot of different athletes, and they can do that this year too. I think the thing about Thornton Academy is I don't remember them having a feature back that just absolutely pounds you like Connor Ayub does. Behind that big offensive line against a really good Bonnie Eagle defense, put up over 300 yards rushing the other night against the Scots that they really had no answer for. So I think if you're looking at a Fitzpatrick finalist, and certainly, makes a very good case to win the Fitzy, I think it's about what you do in the biggest stage against really good teams. And he had by far what I saw the most impressive performance of the year this year. So, Thornton Academy certainly, head and shoulders, I think, above everybody, and then I think Bonnie Eagle right there as well. And then in the North, I still think Portland's the favorite coming out of there. They've got some explosive playmakers, obviously Cordell Jones, certainly. I would say right now the three Fitzy finalists, if I had to pick, would be Connor Abe of Thornton Academy, Cordell Jones of Portland, and then Parker Morin of Coney would be my three Fitzy finalists. But Bangor and Portland played in the regular season. Bangor got down 21-0 early, fumbled on the first two possessions, and then Portland had some big plays to punch it in. I think Bangor can certainly play with them. I think along the line of scrimmage, they're very solid up front. They're physical. The only concern with Bangor is they don't have the team speed that Portland does, which could be a factor, if they play again, Portland, and they can't give up the big play against Portland, which they did the first time around. But I would certainly say Portland's the favorite. And then Bangor, and the Winnacunnet loss, was missing their starting quarterback, Kyle Johnson. He played last week, and he should be back full strength, ready to go at Oxford Hills this week, which will be a big game in South Paris Friday night.
Yeah, Andrew, how do you see Class A going forward, and your kind of recap of the season?
I look at the North, and I agree with everything Bob said. I like Bangor. Kyle Johnson's developed himself more into a traditional quarterback as opposed to just a running back masquerading as a quarterback. My worry is that they're just a bit too physical when they need to keep all their horses healthy. We saw what happened when Kyle went down, what happened to that team. And I'm not saying that they don't have the numbers, but I think after Kyle goes down, they don't have that sort of calming effect at the quarterback, the key position to keep them going. And Zach Cota was good, nothing to take away from him, but you kind of need, the way the Bangor team loves to play their offense, they want to have that strong center strong quarterbacking presence, and he's important. He has to stay healthy for him. Speaking of healthy, I look at Portland, and I know everybody right away, keys in on those two big defeats by Thornton Academy and Bonnie Eagle. However, what isn't, what most people may not, have known is that for one game, Cordell Jones he didn't play. It was a coach's decision, is what I was told. And, he wasn't available for another game. And then they finally, they may have just overwhelmed Lewiston 45-0, but it wasn't a complete team. And then looking at how they played against Exeter, they finally had a healthy team. You were able to see what Cordell could really put together on a big stage. 5 touchdowns against a tough New Hampshire team is nothing to scoff at. Alex Martin, who was able-bodied right there at the running back position, gave him a 1-2 running back combination. So Portland, I think, is starting to peak. If you get this sort of team going back to Thornton Academy and Bonnie Eagle, maybe it's a little bit different. I don't know if Portland exactly wins them, but it's definitely not getting beat by 4 touchdowns. So I like what I'm seeing there. I will say, out of Class A, I was kind of hoping that in both the North and South, it'd be a little bit more even. One of the things I wasn't anticipating was that it seems like all 4 playoff positions were locked up, and there was just no competition from 5 down. Wyndham had a highly touted running back in Speary, who ended up getting hurt and was not available, and the Eagles just couldn't. It didn't seem like they could recover. Lewiston has had a season to forget. 28 points is going to be the worst, lowest, pick your term, offensive production. After looking so promising last year. Edward Little is kind of, they exactly haven't had the best of seasons either. And that's just looking at the North. Then I look at the South, and it was another 3-horse race, followed by South Portland, who's inhabiting that middle ground, and then Scarborough had Mike Vance coming on board, and they've been in a transition, but it wasn't anything. They've got a tough uphill battle against them. They were in contention up till a couple weeks ago, but I think the things just caught up. Massabesic looked promising until they saw just how tough A was truly going to be, and then Sanford, new face at the helm. New faces down there, but again, they didn't have much. They were kind of overmatched all the way around, except for their games outside of the region, and it just seems like it's it wasn't as close as I was hoping to be. I guess that's ultimately what I want to say about where I see Class A.
So Andrew and I both picked Portland and Thornton, with Thornton winning, and Bob, you picked Bangor and Thornton, with Thornton winning. Anybody want to change anything? I'm going to leave mine the way it is.
I think Thornton probably over Portland. Just because, again, I think Portland makes enough big plays, and they've got the big play capability that I think they'll make enough plays to beat Bangor in the final. The surprise team, I think, in the South this year. Well, I don't know, surprise, but a team that's had a kind of sneakily good season is Noble. With Jameer Rose graduating, kind of wondering how good they were going to be, and they've certainly had a very good season. So, actually, I'm going to see them Thursday night when they play at Thornton Academy. So,
nice. So I think we can wrap it up with just talking about, each of us we can kind of go around kind of our highlights of the year, maybe what we're looking for come playoff time, and anything else you want to kind of touch on. We can start with you, Andrew, and we'll go around. And what is your kind of thoughts on the season, your highlights, your thing you remember the most, and looking forward to in the playoffs?
Overall, I think it was it's a transition year coming out of last year. There's just so much top tier talent, it seemed, and you saw quite a bit of that change. And while there was some traditional faces up top, you also saw some new ones kind of starting to emerge. I look at Parker Morin getting the keys to the Coney car, and him, taking right off with it in a good way, mind you. I look at I look at the success of Greeley moving up. showing that they weren't just a really good 8-man team. They're a good football team. I see, I go to Levitt. Levitt, prove that big classes aren't going to take away. They're still going to be equally tough, and they're going to take the top of the mountain until they're not at the top of the mountain. I look at a team, I know it's kind of C centric, but there's just so many good things coming out of Class C. Gardner had the start that they did. At one point you had 3 undefeated teams at 6-0 in Class C, which you just would not see in any other region, any other place. And it's a testament to how much these mid-sized schools were just, so good. Herman's finally showcasing that potential that we've seen so often. Social media has always been dominated by, tailgates, events, just these great, festivities, the community just rallying, and everybody got a chance to finally see Herman put it all together and said, this is our year, which, is just, they're finally breaking into that. They're not just a good, they're a good school, yes, but they're proving themselves to be a good football school, a good football community, in the same way we might have years past looked at Bonnie Eagle, Mountain Valley, Foxcroft Academy, all Stearns when, during their heyday, all these other sort of things. I look down at the Class D ranks and the rise of John Bapst. I know I asked this before, maybe I forget, what was it, 1976?
1976 was the last undefeated regular season.
So you figure from 76 to now, that's before these parents players come in. And there's a period of time where John Bapst they were close. I think 5 years in a row, they had 7-1 records. So they were, one loss seasons. So they were always right there. They had that year in 2008 where they won the Class C state championship. And finally they put it all together and at least they surprised me. Maybe some other folks may not be surprised. Bob, it sounded like you weren't surprised. They come together top of the table against in a class that traditionally kind of says, with Foxcroft Academy gone, it's Winslow kind of saying, no, you need to push us over before you can move on ahead of us. And it seems like John Bapst is one of those teams that's doing just that. Spruce Mountain's another team that I'm looking at. This could be, they come out of the small school ranks and they were looking really good until they lost to Sacopee Valley. They didn't take a step back though. This year they end up coming in. They have, lights out year where they keep pace with some of the toughest teams in the 8-man ranks outside of, Stearns and Old Orchard Beach, and they do what they did. I look at maybe one that kind of flew under the radar, but is equally, worthwhile to mention is Poland. It was 2 years ago, I think Poland starts off going 4-0. Granted, they ended up dropping, but it was just kind of one of those, hey, this is a tough luck school, came in 2004 into the varsity ranks, and now they're getting their second ever home playoff game, and they had their best finish ever going 3rd place. I know that I hear a lot, of all the great things that are going on there. And, you look at who they have for quarterback, I'm going to mention one name right there, and that is Damon Martin. In case you don't remember, Damon Martin was one of those kids who got on Max Preps for his highlight reel. What was it, 100-some yard interception return? Yeah, 100-some yard something. So having him as a weapon, and I guess he got selected as the Southern Class D Player of the Year. So he's just, is offense on top of offense, or, talent on top of talent out of Poland. So there's been some really good rising stars that we've seen. And ultimately, I go to what Bob said about the finalists, and I think he's hit spot on. If you had to ask me who my opinion was for the Fitzpatrick finalists, I would agree. I'd say Connor Ayub out of Thornton Academy is he's putting together his highlight reel efforts when it counts, which is late in the season going into the playoffs. Cordell Jones, his records, what he's accomplished this year, helping to set a new Portland high school record, which is no small feat considering its longevity, of points and touchdowns in a high school career. He's up there right away. And then you got Parker Morin, who's putting together just crazy, numbers that maybe we haven't seen since Ben Lucas. And that's one heck of a thing. Heck, maybe he challenges for Lee St. Hilaire's career yardage numbers through the air. And boy, oh boy, wouldn't that be something? Because Lee, I think, has always kind of been looked at as that the best quarterback that Maine high school football's been able to put together at the high school ranks. So, it's been a really good year. And before I go, I do want to kind of chime in with what Dexter did. What Dexter was able to do, even though unfortunately they didn't get the prize, they made football relevant in a community that really hasn't had much to. They haven't really been for football's not really been the forefront of what they've done. Not since the state championship and the Tigers touchdown that they scored over Maranacook. And this has brought Mark, with what you've done on Eastern Maine Sports for helping to champion the efforts through the T-Mobile Friday night 5G Friday night lights for them was just it was awesome seeing all the community, the schools, the school and the students rally around that. And I'm hoping that all this goodwill can be channeled towards, they didn't get the $1 million prize among other things to get this, but I'm hoping they can channel that to get in that direction sooner rather than later.
Yeah, just on that that was gonna be kind of the main thing I touched on, that the community in general, everybody, the businesses, the parents, especially the kids, the younger kids at the middle school, because that's who it really would have affected. They were all in on it. It was something I've never seen. I've never seen. Just a community. I mean, and obviously, as a lot of people know, I am from that area, so I kind of see it. I saw it directly every day. I actually my other job other than Eastern Maine Sports is I work at the school in Dexter, so I see these kids every day, and I see what it meant for the school and what it meant. I mean, all the teachers, all the administrators are on board, and tip of the cap to Adam Gudrow, the athletic director. I don't know who votes on it, but he should get athletic director of the year. I mean, what he did to even get them in this contest, and what he did, for that whole month, leading the charge. I mean, he went above and beyond what I've ever seen. There's many great athletic directors. That's not putting anybody else down, but just what he did was amazing, and it was something else. But no, it was a fun month, and that rally they had there on that Tuesday, the T-Mobile game they had on that Saturday, that it was a great environment that whole month, especially those two events. Bob, you want to touch on kind of your highlight of the season, and then maybe what you're looking forward to in the playoffs going forward?
Absolutely. I mean, there's several highlights of the season. I think first of all was week 3, Saturday afternoon. Buddy Sean Stackhouse and I make the road trip down to Deering High School. The matinee game was Cheverus Kennebunk, which went into overtime, won by Kennebunk. And then we went to the Clam Bake in Scarborough with Edward Hart and had a great time down there. And then nightcap, another overtime game was Falmouth Greeley. So that probably was singly the best day of the entire season. So
I don't mean to interrupt.
Yes.
But it's pretty good. The football was so good that the clam bake wasn't even the highlight of the day. So that's how good the football was, because that's hard to do. The clam bake is pretty good.
Clam Bake is pretty good. Absolutely. Good company. And next thing we knew, we figured we were going to have a ton of time between the first game and the second game. It was an 8 o'clock start at Greeley, so I didn't pull into my driveway till 1 a.m. So that was a late night, but it was a great day. And obviously, touching on Greeley, had a chance to see them twice this year in person, and just very impressed with their personnel. Their quarterback, Luke Piper, just an outstanding player, and they've got some other real good skilled people around him. Certainly, watching Westbrook and just impressed by them on both sides of the line of scrimmage was really liked Westbrook a lot this year. Again, Thornton Academy, can't say enough about them and the program. Remember going down and watching them play Bangor real early in the season. It was youth football night down at Saco that night. And just watching all of those kids out on the field at halftime, I turned to the guy sitting next to me from Bangor. I said, no wonder why Thornton Academy is so successful in football. Just the number of youth players out there, and just a great football culture, and they really embrace football and community of Saco is amazing. And then, you go on a smaller scale, I think communities becoming like that is Herman. They've got a ton of kids playing, and they're going to be a real factor for years to come. So certainly, some of my takeaways from the season. It's been a fun season, and looking forward to the postseason as well.
Yeah, and I kind of touched on the Dexter thing, and also I want to say that Class C has probably been one of the most fun classes to follow throughout a football season. And it still will be going into the playoffs. It's been a lot of fun. Again, the freshman from Winslow, that was one of my favorite interviews I've done in quite some time. That he's well spoken for anybody, especially whatever he is, 14, 15-year-old kid. Very, very well spoken. But it's just been a fun year, and we're going full force. Obviously this is about football, but we got a lot of soccer and field hockey coming up too. And then Bob, I'm sure, will be back with me in about a month to preview some high school basketball, right, Bob?
Absolutely. As much as I love football, honestly, high school basketball is my passion. So, really looking forward to that as well. But, and then also, this season had a great time in the public address booth this year. Again, shout out to my protege, Jackson Woodworth, who helped me at the Bangor games as my spotter. And he's 15 years old, wants to get into announcing and things, and did an outstanding job this year as well. But, just had a blast doing all the Bangor home games and the John Babst home games this year.
Yeah, and since we're giving shout outs, I want to give some shout outs. Charles Beal, who's the Foxcroft boys coach, has joined our team, has done some great work on play-by-play action. Ryan Danker joined him last week, did some color commentary, and then this weekend we got, as I said, we got Charles Beal, and Logan Martin's going to join him. He's going to do some color commentary this weekend for us. So we got a new team, and definitely if you have TikTok, check out a new TikTok. I've got Kelsey Lamoja running that for us, and that's kind of booming too. And we got everything going. We got definitely new people coming on, and just getting bigger and better at Eastern Maine Sports. And as is Andrew's Maine high school football. And we've all got to add new things every year. I do every year, and you definitely did that kind of. Your site was already great, but it definitely improved with the stuff you added this year, Andrew.
I liked, I wanted, in the industry of social media, if you're not growing, there's no really standstill. You're either growing or you're falling back. So you always want to, offer up new ideas. And two of the things that I tried to do to kind of, provide some different ways to put eyeballs on the product, I did the main rankings review, which kind of, it took away a little bit from the traditional Sunday morning, here's the scores, here's the standings. I got to give a little bit of context because, context is king. Kind of explain what's going on, give people a little bit of a sense of why things work the way they do, rather than finding out after the fact, explaining things. And then I also kind of, I liked, offering the pick'ems, because who doesn't like competition in this day? So getting a chance to encourage people to have that greater sense of involvement in the community has just done wonders for what I've been able to for my site, to be able to see it expand in ways that hasn't happened in years past.
Yeah, but Andrew, how did my team beat your team and they're not ahead of them?
Oh, how did my team beat them, but they're not ahead? How is it that this team has one more win, but they're a place back? How is it? Yeah, some things.
My team beat your team by 50, or my team beat this team by 50 points. How come they're not,
You'll always get that. but you do a great job with that, Andrew, and Bob, you do your thing, and and lastly, I want to say our high school football predictions. We have 19 people that are all picking very well this year. I mean, at the top we get it very close, but even at the bottom, the last place person is 10 games over 500. Usually they're like 15 below 500. So we're doing pretty well this year, aren't we, Bob?
No, I think collectively this has been. I can't remember a year too that the consensus has been like the top picker is even with the consensus, which never happens. Usually the top picker is usually about 8, 9 games ahead of the consensus. So
yeah,
definitely a very strong field this year.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's not like there are any easier games. That's for sure. For sure, they've been hard, but we've been doing all right. But all right, I think we're going to close this up.